A man can subsist on varieties of grains, fruits, and milk ordained by God, and there is no need of animal food, save and except in particular cases. The illusioned king or executive head, even though sometimes advertised as a great philosopher and learned scholar, will allow slaughterhouses in the state without knowing that torturing poor animals clears the way to hell for such foolish kings or executive heads. The executive head must always be alert to the safety of the prajas, both man and animal, and inquire whether a particular living being is harassed at any place by another living being. The harassed living being must at once be caught and put to death, as shown by Maharaj Pariksit. The people's government, or government by the people, should not allow killing of innocent animals by the sweet will of foolish government men. They must know the codes of God, as mentioned in the revealed scriptures. Maharaj Pariksit quotes here that according to the codes of God, the irresponsible king or state executive jeopardizes his good name, duration of life, power and strength, and ultimately his progressive march towards a better life and salvation after death. Such foolish men do not even believe in the existence of a next life. While commenting on this particular verse, we have in our presence the statement of a great modern politician who has recently died and left his will, which discloses his poor fund of knowledge on the codes of God, as mentioned by Maharaj Pariksit. The politician was so ignorant of the codes of God that he writes, "I do not believe in any such ceremonies, and to submit to them, even as a matter of form, would be hypocrisy and an attempt to delude ourselves and others. I have no religious sentiment in the matter." Contrasting these statements of a great politician in the modern age with those of Maharaj Pariksit, we find a vast difference. Maharaj Pariksit was pious according to the scriptural codes, whereas the modern politician goes by his personal belief and sentiments. Any great man of the material world is, after all, a conditioned soul. He is bound by his hands and feet by the ropes of material nature, and still the foolish conditioned soul thinks of himself as free to act by his whimsical sentiments. The conclusion is that people in the time of Maharaj Pariksit were happy, and the animals were given proper protection because the executive head was not whimsical or ignorant of God's law. Foolish, faithless creatures try to avoid the existence of the Lord and proclaim themselves as secular at the cost of valuable human life. The human life is especially meant for knowing the science of God. The foolish creatures, especially in the age of Kali, instead of knowing God scientifically, make propaganda against the religious belief as well as the existence of God, even though they are always bound by the laws of God, by the symptoms of birth, death, old age, and disease. Wow. This is just a lot of knowledge here to try to understand. The main point here is that these false executive heads and their whimsical proclamations cannot help us to overcome the cycle of birth and death. So as we discussed previously, in our eternal nature, in our true nature, we don't have to experience death. Death is something that is foreign to us. This is why we're so uncomfortable with the prospect of it. So to put your faith in these illusioned kings or executive heads that allow the torturing of poor animals and allow the torture of people, this is not going to help you overcome the cycle of birth and death. It's not going to help you to understand your true nature. It's not going to help you become enlightened in transcendental knowledge. As a matter of fact, that's the last thing that these people want. The last thing that they want is a society full of enlightened people acting in their creative mode. What they rather have is drones, worker drones, to fulfill their different demonic plans for sense pleasure, for exploitation, so that the few can enjoy while the many suffer. So I recommend that people stop putting their faith in these illusioned executive heads and rather start putting your faith in the great sages and rishis. They don't want anything from you. They don't want you to bow down. They're not even extant on this planet right now, most of them, but they have left bodies of knowledge that we can study, that we can become enlightened by. So no one's asking you for anything. No one is trying to get you to bow down to them. Rather, they're trying to do something for you, to help you to become free from this illusion and the cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. I'll go ahead and read the next verse. He, Maharaj Pariksit, repeatedly addressed and questioned the bull thus, O son of Sarabi, who has cut off your 3 legs? In the state of the kings who are obedient to the laws of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, there is no one as unhappy as you. Purport. The kings or executive heads of all states must know the codes of Lord Krishna, generally Bhagavad-gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and must act accordingly in order to fulfill the mission of human life, which is to make an end to all the miseries of material conditions. One who knows the codes of Lord Krishna can achieve this end without any difficulty. In the Bhagavad-gita, in a synopsis, we can understand the codes of Godhead, and in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the same codes are explained further. In a state where the codes of Krishna are followed, no one is unhappy. Where such codes are not followed, the first sign is that the 3 legs of the representative of religion are cut off, and thereby all miseries follow. When Krishna was personally present, the codes of Krishna were being followed without question, but in his absence such codes are presented in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam for the guidance of the blind persons who happen to be at the helm of all affairs. So we may hear the name Lord Krishna. We may take this to be some secular thing, but it's not. Krishna simply means all attractive, or the reservoir of pleasure. So let's just assume for a moment that there were a Supreme Personality of Godhead, the creator of all that be. He would have to be all attractive. He would have to be the reservoir of pleasure. So Krishna simply means the reservoir of pleasure and the one who is all attractive to every living entity. So whatever small pleasure we feel in this world is just a drop in the ocean of pleasure. And that by connecting with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is known as Krishna, that we can feel unlimited bliss, unlimited happiness, unlimited pleasure, and we don't have to feel the pangs of material miseries. So when we hear this term Krishna, we should understand it's not a secular term, and that is, Krishna is not asking us to bow down before him or to become his slave. Rather, he's offering us the highest benefit, the benefit to link with the ultimate reservoir of all pleasure and to live an eternal life full of happiness and bliss. So let's try to take it seriously. Let's not try to let our preconceived notions of Godhead come in the way of the knowledge that's being transmitted right now. Try to listen to what I'm saying with an open heart, with open consciousness, and so therefore we can derive some benefit. Okay, let's move along in the story here into text 13, the translation. O bull, you are offenseless and thoroughly honest. Therefore I wish all good to you. Please tell me the perpetrator of these mutilations, which blackmail the reputation of the son of Pritha. Purport. The reputation of the reign of Maharaj Ramachandra and that of the kings who have followed in the footsteps of Maharaj Ramachandra, like the Pandavas and their descendants, are never to be forgotten, because in their kingdom offenseless and honest living beings were never in trouble. The bull and the cow are the symbols of the most offenseless living beings, because even the stool and urine of these animals are utilized to benefit human society. The descendants of the sons of Pritha, like Maharaj Pariksit, were afraid of losing their reputations. But in the modern days, the leaders are not even afraid of killing such offenseless animals. Herein lies the difference between the reign of those pious kings and the modern states ruled by irresponsible executive heads without knowledge of the codes of God. So this verse, I can say that in my personal experience, I can speak to some of these things, that truly the cow and the bull are the most offenseless of all living creatures. They are so humble and so tolerant and so beautiful and so beneficial. I have cows here at the Protect the Cow Farm Sanctuary. We've been protecting cows for 3 decades now, and the cow is the most wonderful creature. You can learn so much from the cow about being peaceful, about being tolerant, about being giving. And here people may be shocked to hear, well, even the stool and the urine of the animals are beneficial to human society, but that is certainly a fact that one of the greatest fertilizers for the land in the entire world is the dung of the cow and the urine of the cow. These can be spread over the fields, and they can double and triple the production of the field. And also, we can see that as far as the rules and regulations for milking cows, that the cow is in her stall, and if you ever go to a dairy farm, and then the cow is passing stool and urine into the gutter behind her, but we see that the milk supply is never contaminated. So, obviously when they milk the cow, they clean the udder, etc., but it's not exactly like an operating room antiseptic situation. So there's some unique feature of manure and urine coming from the cow that is not a contaminating effect on the milk supply. But if you keep any other animal housed within that barn, even if you keep a horse or a sheep, even if they're 50 feet away from the cows, that milk cannot be sold to the human population because their stool and urine is so contaminating that even if they have no contact even with it, that milk is considered to be contaminated. So even we can see in a practical way that the milk supply is never contaminated by the stool or urine of a cow. But if you keep any other animal within that barn, even if they're 50 feet or 100 feet away from the milking operation, that milk cannot be sold to human population because guaranteed it will be contaminated. So this may be kind of a bewildering thing to the layman. How can this be? But the practical reality and the rules and the regulations of dairy farms bears out what's being said here in these verses. Anyway, we're coming down to the end of the show, and I think on the next show we'll continue talking along these lines. There's a lot more ground to cover. We'll start with text 14. We can go through the rest of this chapter because it's just coming across with a lot of important information. So I'm going to try to do the show every Saturday at noon, and people can tune in. Right now we're going to stay on this line of the rest of this chapter from the Srimad Bhagavatam and the importance of cow protection, but we're also going to explore some ancient music. We'll talk about some modern-day stories in the news and how that relates to the Vedas. So I want to thank everyone for listening, and you can tune in next Saturday at noon, and we'll continue along this line. And I want to just thank you for taking part and for listening with an open mind. I'm going to close out the show with a little bit of music, ancient music, and I hope everyone enjoys that. And I want to thank you all for tuning in. Dhira dhira jana priya Krishna Kirtana Gana Ratana Prabhu Premamritam Banidhi Dhira Dhira Jana Priya Priya Karo Nimar Kadam Pujito Tanna Kipa Bharau Bhuvi Bhuva Bhara Vahan Tarapu Bande Rupa Sanasana Raghujugo Srijivago Palaka Vande Rupa Sanatana